Good morning, everybody. Welcome back to another episode of the Hockey Talk with TG podcast. I'm Ty Glenn. Hope you guys are having a great Friday. Got lots of NHL news to cover, so make sure that you stay tuned in to this episode until the end. As always, don't forget to hit the like and subscribe button on YouTube. If you're watching the podcast on YouTube, make sure that you're following the Hockey Talk with TG podcast on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, and iHeartRadio so you can stay up to date on the latest episodes of the Hockey Talk TG podcast and the latest hockey news that is trending in the world. But without further ado, we are going to go ahead and get started with the NHL news for today. We'll recap the Hurricanes and Capitals game 2 along with the Oilers and Golden Knights game 2, and then we'll get into some other additional NHL news that I want to talk about. So let's go ahead and get right into it. So the Washington Capitals, they hold on for a 3-1 win over the Carolina Hurricanes in Game 2 on Thursday. So that series is tied up at 1. I feel like after, the Capitals had a abysmal or horrific Game 1, I feel like they came back and they played with a much better effort in Game 2. In Game 1, they were outshot, they were outplayed, less puck possession, and they changed all that in Game 2. And fun fact, in the first two games, I should say, Capitals were outshot 61-35 in the first two games, and they were outshot 28-21 in this game. But they still found a way to capitalize on the scoring change, and they found a way to even up the series against the Carolina Hurricanes. Winning the NHL is never easy, so you always got to put forth your best effort when playing in the NHL. And I think the Capitals had a great effort in this game against Carolina. Tom Wilson had a goal and an assist for a 2-point night. Of course, his goal coming on the empty netter to seal the victory. Connor McMichael and John Carlson also scored for the Capitals. Of course, Connor McMichael had the first goal of the game 2 minutes and 16 seconds into the second period. Capitalized on the Hurricanes' turnover and scored on a breakaway past Freddie Anderson. And John Carlson's goal was on the power play, which was also the game winner in this game. And fun fact, John Carlson's power play goal ended Carolina's perfect 19-for-19 penalty kill streak in the playoffs, which the Hurricanes also had the best penalty kill in the regular season at 83.6%. So if John Carlson or any Capitals player did not score on this power play, it wouldn't surprise me because, like I said, Hurricanes, when you're going up against the Hurricanes PK, you're most likely not going to score a power play goal. But Logan Thompson, he made 27 saves in the win. Of course, 16 of those saves coming in the third period. And for the Carolina Hurricanes, Shane Gostisbehere scored the lone goal for Carolina. Of course, it was a power play goal midway through the third period, which cut the Capitals' lead to 1 before Tom Wilson scored an empty netter to seal the win. And Freddie Anderson made 18 saves in the loss. Game 3 is Saturday, May the 10th. In Carolina at 5 o'clock p.m. Central Time. That game will air on TNT, True TV, and HBO Max for you guys to watch. Of course, we'll see if the Capitals can take a 2-1 series lead or will Carolina take a 2-1 series lead. All I know is the Carolina Hurricanes, when it comes to playing in the playoffs, they play really good at home. So it's going to be a tough battle for the Capitals down in Carolina with the Caniacs fans in the crowd and hoping to take a 2-1 series lead because, like I said, Carolina plays well at home when it comes to playing in the playoffs. At least that's from my perspective. I can't speak for anybody else's, but from my perspective, from what I've seen from Carolina over the past few years in the Stanley Cup playoffs, they play really good at home. But it's going to be a tough game for the Capitals down in Carolina. But moving on to Game 2 of the Edmonton Oilers and the VGK Vegas Golden Knights. Leon Draisaitl, he scores the overtime game-winning goal as the Oilers win 5-4 in overtime against the Golden Knights in Game 2 on Thursday. Capitalized on a 2-on-1 rush with Connor McDavid, who assisted on the play. He made a great move around Jack Eichel, had him seeing stars, and he passed the puck over to his buddy, his line mate Leon Draisaitl for the overtime game winner. Great goal nonetheless and great assist by Connor McDavid. Just danced around Jack Eichel. Like I said, he had him seeing stars. And he got a pass over to Connor McDavid. I mean, not Connor McDavid, Leon Draisaitl, who scored on into the wide open cage. Game winner, Oilers take a 2-0 series lead, heading home to Edmonton. Oilers secondary scoring and their depth got on the board in this one as well, as Jake Wallman vastly poking in Darnell Nurse and Evander Kane scored for Edmonton. Of course, Jake Wallman, this is his first career Stanley Cup playoff goal. And Connor McDavid, he had 3 assists in the win. And Calvin Picker, again, coming up big for Edmonton. He is the unsung hero for this team. With the Oilers, if my bold prediction is right, like I said, I predicted the Oilers to win the Stanley Cup before the season started. You guys will hear me say this a lot until the Oilers get eliminated. But if the Oilers somehow win the Stanley Cup, which, like I said, I'm starting to have second thoughts, or maybe they won't win the Stanley Cup, but who knows? If they do win, got to give a shout out to Calvin Picker, because somehow, ever since he stepped in for Stuart Skinner, which Stuart Skinner did play games 1 and 2 of the first round Stanley Cup playoffs against the LA Kings, ever since Calvin Picker has stepped in for Stuart Skinner, the Oilers have been lights out. But I don't know if that trend will continue, but we'll just have to see. But for the Golden Knights, Victor Olofsson had 2 goals and assists for a 3-point night. William Karlsson also scored for Vegas. Alex Pietrangelo had a goal and assist for 2-point night in his return to Game 2. He did not play Game 1 due to an illness, and this is Alex Pietrangelo's second goal of the Stanley Cup playoffs. And Adin Hill made 33 saves in the loss. But to take away from this overtime loss, we got to talk about that cross-check penalty on Nicholas Roy. That penalty was unnecessary. I knew it was going to be a 5-minute major, and the game was kind of, when I first saw it, and before the referee had said it, and before Chris Conblock held up the finger 5, signaling that should be a 5-minute major. Before he did that, before the referee said that, I knew right away, 5-minute major. And the game was kind of, because that was a dirty cross-check to the face that Nicholas Roy did on Trent Frederick. The Oilers had a 5-minute power play, but they failed to convert on the man advantage, but they still got the win nonetheless. But that penalty was unnecessary. It didn't need to happen. It shouldn't have happened, especially if you're down 1-0 in the series going into overtime, or going into that game, rather. You're down 1-0 in the series. You're in overtime. You're trying to find a way to even up the series at home before you go on the road to Edmonton, and then you take a stupid, unnecessary penalty like this. Like, when I first saw that, I was like, was that really necessary? Which it wasn't. That's a hypothetical question. That penalty was not necessary. That was a hypothetical question, by the way. That penalty was not necessary. Like, it didn't need to happen. It shouldn't have happened. I don't know why it happened. I didn't know what was he thinking, but he got a 5-minute game is kind of got a 5-minute penalty for cross-checking, and the game is kind of. We'll see if the Golden Knights can win the next 2 games on the road and even up the series for heading back home for Vegas for a potential Game 5. But Game 3 is Saturday in Edmonton at 8 o'clock p.m. Central Time. That game will air on TNT, True TV, and HBO Max for you guys to watch. But moving on to Utah Hockey Club. So I did do a 15-minute video talking about Utah Hockey Club changing the name to Utah Mammoth. I did do a 15-minute video of that on the TG Hockey channel. I also dropped it on the Hockey Talk with TG podcast for the audio listeners to listen to. But if you guys didn't get the news from Wednesday, Utah Hockey Club changed their name to Utah Mammoth. Of course, they were called Utah Hockey Club for the 2024-25 season, and that was, when they relocated from Arizona to Utah and became Utah Hockey Club. But it's kind of crazy, like, after being in Arizona for 28 years, of course, they came to Arizona in 1996, but before that, they were the Winnipeg Jets, the original Winnipeg Jets, who came to the league in 1972 after being in the WHA. And for those who don't know, WHA stands for World Hockey Association, and you have players like Gordie Howe, and I think Gordie Howe and Bobby Hull playing in the WHA at the time that it was still around. Then you had teams like the Winnipeg Jets and Edmonton Oilers still the WHA. But yeah, after being in the WHA, the Winnipeg Jets came to the NHL in 1972, and they were in the NHL for until 1996, and then that was when they came to Arizona, called the Coyotes. They were in Arizona for 28 years, and then they went to Utah and became Utah Hockey Club, but the team finally decided on a name, and that will be Utah Mammoth. Obviously, as I said in the 15-minute video that I broke down of Utah Hockey Club changing their name to Utah Mammoth, if you did not watch that video, make sure you go check that out. I did say that this caught me by surprise because I didn't expect this to be done during the Stanley Cup playoffs. I expected it to be done during the regular season. Not the regular season, the off season. Man, I don't know why I say regular season, but I expected it to be done during the off season, somewhere between the NHL draft and free agency. I expected this to be done, but not now during the Stanley Cup playoffs. So I moved the mic. So this name, doing this now, it caught me by surprise because after I dropped my episode of Hockey Talk TG Podcast on Wednesday, that was when they changed the name, and I felt like, you know what, maybe I'll just do a 15-minute video just talking about this, and I did, and I also mentioned in that video that caught me by surprise. But after 13 months of planning this out, we finally get the Utah Mammoth, and I kind of figured this was going to be the name for Utah Hockey Club because or I should say for the Utah team, because they're not called Utah Hockey Club anymore. I kind of figured this was going to be the permanent name because Utah Outlaws didn't sound right, as I said on the Hockey Talk TG Podcast numerous times, and on that 15-minute video, I said that name sounded more country themed, South theme-ish type of name. And then Utah Hockey Club, you guys know how I feel about that name. Hate that name. I said that a bunch of times on the Hockey Talk TG Podcast. So, you guys know how I feel about that. So, Utah Mammoth was the right way to go with it. Utah Yeti was an option, but because of the cooler brand Yeti, they took that out because of copyright and trademark reasons. I also knew that Mammoth was going to be the name because they did leak the name a few weeks prior to the official announcement of renaming Utah Hockey Club to Utah Mammoth because they did leak it out on YouTube and Twitter. So that's another reason why I knew Mammoth was going to be the name. But I'm actually kind of like Mammoth. I do like Mammoth. I wish they had Blizzards as an option, but again, they took that out. Not for copyright reasons, but just because, it wasn't getting popular enough. It wasn't a popular name among the fans. So they took that out. But I do like Utah Mammoth. I do like the logo. The logo is sort of like the Nashville Predators logo almost. And I'm going to pull up a picture of it on my phone so you guys can see it. Of course, if you're watching on YouTube, you'll be able to see it. It almost looks like the Nashville Predators logo when I first saw it. So that just kind of, that was like interesting to me when I first saw it. So this is the logo. If you're watching this on YouTube, this is the Utah Mammoth logo. Fire logo. I love the logo. But I don't know. It's similar to the Nashville Predators logo almost. So I felt like they could have done at least something different, like add it a little bit more design for that logo to be different because it's like the Nashville Predators logo almost. But other than that, I really do love the logo. I love the jerseys. Of course, they're going to be going with the Utah Mammoth logo on their chest. That's going to be on the front with the outline of Utah State being on the shoulders. And then for the away jersey, it'll just be the same one as we saw in the regular season for Utah. Just Utah on the chest, and then you got the logo on the shoulders. So that'll be the away jerseys. The jerseys look sick nonetheless. Of course, their colors will be rock black, salt white, and mountain blue. as I saw on their social media accounts, and also I did a 15-minute video talking about this. And then this kind of intrigues me because could we see Utah Mammoth start a rivalry with the Nashville Predators? I mean, I know Nashville, it's in the South. Utah, it's not. But still, I seen all the Ice Age gifs that people was saying about this. You have Manny and Diego, Sabertooth Tiger, Mammoth. I seen all that. So that kind of also led me to think that this could be a rivalry between Utah Mammoth and Nashville Predators. But let me know you guys' thoughts on that. But both teams are going to be looking to be in playoff spots soon, especially the Nashville Predators after the horrific season they had, unexpected season that they had. They're going to be looking to go in a playoff spot soon. And also both teams are in the Central Division. So we could see a rivalry between the Mammoth and the Predators. We'll just have to see. But let me know you guys' thoughts on that. Do you think it could be a rivalry between the Predators and the Mammoth? Who knows? But moving on to some other big NHL news besides Utah Mammoth, or the Utah team changing their name to Utah Mammoth on Wednesday. Has some other big news from Thursday as Joel Quenneville, former Chicago Blackhawks head coach, was hired as the Anaheim Ducks head coach on Thursday. He replaces Greg Cronin, who was fired after the Ducks finished with a 35-37-10 record, which is a 21-point improvement from the 2023-24 season. And they finished 6th in the division. And this is Joel Quenneville's first time back in the NHL after being out for 3.5 years because of the Kyle Beach sexual assault case for the Blackhawks back in 2010. Joel Quenneville and Stan Bowman were fired from their jobs in 2021. Joel Quenneville was fired as coach of the Panthers. Stan Bowman fired as GM of the Blackhawks because of their involvement in the Kyle Beach sexual assault case, which the Blackhawks video head coach at the time, Brad Aldridge, he sexually assaulted Kyle Beach. And when I first saw this in 2021, I had no words for it. I didn't know what to say. I didn't know that this happened in 2010 because you guys know in 2010, that was our first Stanley Cup in 49 years. Beat the Philadelphia Flyers that year, and we ended our 49-year cup drought. So that was a big thing in 2010. But to have this come up just to ruin the party and to have a big effect on us as an original six franchise, I had no words for it. But in 2024, Joel Quenneville was reinstated to be back in the NHL after being banned from his role after the Kyle Beach sexual assault case. But yeah, I don't know how to feel about this. I'm still a little bit disappointed. I'm still a little bit disappointed in this because I feel like after being involved in the case and not saying nothing when it happened, shouldn't even come back to the NHL. But again, I'm not surprised that this happened because you got Stan Bowman as general manager of the Edmonton Oilers, and then there was rumors that Joel Quenneville will be the Ducks head coach. So when this was official, I had no reaction because I wasn't surprised. I kind of knew this was going to happen because, again, rumors about Joel Quenneville being the next head coach of the Anaheim Ducks. And plus, when those rumors came out, I talked about it on my Hockey Talk with TG podcast a while back. So, yeah. But take a look at Joel Quenneville's past success, his coaching record. His coaching record is .969, .572, and .150 with the St. Louis Blues, Colorado Avalanche, Chicago Blackhawks, and Florida Panthers. His 969 wins makes him second all-time in coaching wins in NHL history, trailing Scotty Bowman's 1,244 coaching wins. He is a three-time Stanley Cup champion with the Chicago Blackhawks, winning the Stanley Cup in 2010, 2013, and 2015. But yeah, overall thoughts. I mean, I'm not surprised at the decision. he did say he was going to try and do better, and and he also said that he was quote unquote truly grateful to be back in the league, and he's going to take more of an initiative approach to do better in his coaching job, because he was I feel like, I don't want to say this because I'm still mad at that case, though. But, Joel Quenneville and anybody else involved in the case not saying nothing when Kyle Beach was sexually assaulted by the video head coach of Bad Altruist. I'm still mad about that. But he did, feel a little bit upset that he should have said something. And, something should have been said when it first happened. But obviously, the Kyle Beach sexual assault case, it does have a huge effect on us as an Original Six franchise. Obviously, something that you don't want to happen at all. Didn't want this to affect us, but it did. Had a big effect on us. Didn't want this to happen. Couldn't believe it happened when it was first announced in 2021. So, yeah, I don't know how to feel about Joe. I don't know how I feel about Joel Quenneville being back in the NHL. But again, not surprised, since Stan Bowman is still in the NHL or reinstated back in the NHL after, being fired as GM of the Blackhawks in 2021. He's now general manager of the Edmonton Oilers. Now you got Joel Quenneville as the Ducks head coach, so I'm not surprised. But this will be an interesting thing for the Ducks going forward. They have a lot of youth on their team. They're a rebuilding team, just like the Blackhawks and Sharks. So we'll see how everything goes. And can't wait for the Blackhawks to square off against the Ducks with Coach Q behind the bench. But moving on to Mikko Rantanen's production. So Game 2 of the Dallas Stars and Winnipeg Jets playoff series is today at 8:30 p.m. Central Time. This will be on TNT, True TV, and HBO Max. And I just wanted to talk about Mikko Rantanen's production and what he's been doing for the Dallas Stars. Certainly has been unreal. Back-to-back games with a hat trick. Of course, he had a hat trick in Game 7 of the first round against his former team, the Colorado Avalanche. And he had a hat trick in Game 1 on, Tuesday? Was it Wednesday? I think it was Wednesday. He had a hat trick in Game 1 in the Stars 3-2 win over the Jets, a natural hat trick for Mikko Rantanen. He leads the 2025 playoffs with 8 goals and 15 points. So the Moose is certainly loose. And I said this off air. If the Dallas Stars, and that's a big if the Dallas Stars win the Stanley Cup, Mikko Rantanen is your Conn Smythe Trophy winner. If he continues this style play. If he continues the style play and the Dallas Stars win the Stanley Cup, Mikko Rantanen is your Conn Smythe Trophy winner. And fun fact, when Mikko Rantanen had those back-to-back hat-tricks in Game 7 the first round against the Avalanche and Game 1 against the Jets, he became the first player since Jari Kurri to record hat-tricks in consecutive playoff games. Jari Kurri did it in Game 5 and 6 of the 1985 Conference Finals with the Edmonton Oilers. And overall, Mikko Rantanen is the third player in NHL history to achieve this feat. Of course, Doug Bentley being the first NHL player to do this in Games 4 and 5 in the 1944 semifinals with the Chicago Blackhawks. And he set an NHL postseason record by factoring in on 12 consecutive team goals, surpassing the previous record held by Hockey Hall of Famer and Penguins all-time player Mario Lemieux. So his production has been well off the course. It's certainly been unreal. Obviously coming over from that trade from Carolina. He played on 3 teams this season. He played with the Avalanche, Hurricanes, and Stars. But he came over from the trade in Carolina because, obviously he didn't want to be in Carolina. He didn't feel like this is where he wanted to be. He didn't feel comfortable in Carolina. He wasn't doing too much in Carolina. He comes on to Dallas and puts on an absolute clinic. And he had one of the best Game 7s of all time in Stanley Cup playoff history against the Colorado Avalanche, recording a hat trick and assist for 4.9. All that being in the third period. So he's just been unreal, and I can't wait to see what happens in Game 2 between the Stars and Jets. Like I said, that is today at 8:30 p.m. Central Time, coming on TNT, True TV, and HBO Max. We'll see if he continues to rack up some points and score some more goals for Dallas. But he's certainly the star, no pun intended, for Dallas. So let me know you guys' thoughts on Mikko Rantanen's performance. Do you think he'll get another hat trick in game 2, or do you think he'll put on another star show performance? Again, no pun intended. But yeah, let me know you guys' thoughts on Mikko Rantanen's performance in the comments down below, if you have any. Alright, Stanley Cup playoff games on the slate for today. There's only 2 games on the slate, both doubleheaders on TNT. We got Game 3 of the Toronto Maple Leafs and Florida Panthers at 6 o'clock p.m. Central Time. Maple Leafs lead this best-of-7 series 2-0. And fun fact, this is the first time since the 2023 Stanley Cup Final that the Panthers are down 2-0 in the series. So they need to have a strong Game 3 performance and also strong Game 4 performance. They want to come back and get in the series. I did say Panthers in 6. It could be Panthers in 7. Who knows? I don't think Toronto's winning the series, especially with Anthony Stolarz being out. He's not playing Game 3, I don't think. And he was the backbone in net for the Toronto Maple Leafs, and he's still out with that undisclosed injury. But we'll see how everything goes in Game 3. But yeah, Maple Leafs lead this best-of-7 series 2-0. And then that'll come on at 6 o'clock p.m. Central Time on TNT, True TV, and HBO Max. And then we got Game 2 of the Dallas Stars and Winnipeg Jets at 8:30 p.m. Central Time. Also coming on TNT, True TV, HBO Max. Stars lead this best-of-7 series 1-0 with a Mikko Rantanen hat trick in Game 1. Mark Scheifele did return to the lineup in Game 1. He actually had a goal in Game 1. We'll see if he gets another one in Game 2. And then some Stanley Cup playoff games for Saturday, also coming on TNT, True TV, and HBO Max. We got Game 3, the Washington Capitals and Carolina Hurricanes at 5 o'clock p.m. Central Time. That series is tied up at 1 game apiece. And then we got Game 3 of the VGK, Vegas Golden Knights and Edmonton Oilers at 8 o'clock p.m. Central Time. Oilers lead this best-of-7 series 2-0 after Vegas lost in overtime 5-4 to Edmonton. And the Oilers, they just keep on staying in the playoff push. I think that's what 5-6 consecutive playoff comeback wins for this team. So it's better than Bill. And Calvin Pickard, again, as I said on the Hockey Talk TG podcast numerous times, being that unsung hero for the Oilers. That's going to do it for this episode of the Hockey Talk with TG podcast. Thank you guys for tuning in as always. Really do appreciate it. Don't forget to hit like and subscribe to the podcast on YouTube, and make sure to follow the Hockey Talk with TG podcast on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, and iHeartRadio. Hope you guys have a great rest of your day. God first as always. Be blessed. I'll see you guys Monday for another episode of the Hockey Talk TG podcast. Also Tuesday, the mock draft video will be out on the TG Hockey channel, so stay tuned for that. And yeah, have a good weekend. Have a great day. Take care.